I don't know if it was a tough decision in 2020, but you didn't vote for Donald Trump or Joe Biden. What do you think you're going to do this November?
I'm not going to vote for either one of them again, and it wasn't that tough. I did the same thing in 16 and 20, and will likely do it again. I'm hoping that there will be another.
Who does that help? Voting for neither one,
yeah.
Who does that help? Who does that serve? Because the likes of Donald Trump or those who want to push voter suppression would love to hear people say, I'm going to write in a candidate. That's essentially not voting.
Yeah, not really. I mean, I think that's why we have the ability to write in. And people deserve to have choices. In our state, Joe Biden beat Donald Trump by 33 points. My vote was not swaying the final outcome of the Maryland votes, but I did get to make a statement. And, I voted for, Ronald Reagan, saying I think that we need to get back to leaders like that in the Republican Party.
It would be tough for him to be the next president.
Yeah, probably. I wish it were, another way, but no, you're right.
I want to ask about the Supreme Court twofold. Your thought on them hearing Donald Trump's claim of immunity. If they do side with him and decide that a U.S. citizen is above the law, that could be transformative for the future of this country.
Of course. Well, so look, I've got a long history on this one. My dad infamously was the deciding vote on the House Judiciary Committee, the first Republican to come out for Nixon's impeachment, and said no man is above the law, not even the President of the United States.
So your dad wasn't Hulk Hogan?
No, it wasn't Hulk. No, that's my uncle, Hulk. But my dad, those words are still true today. I mean, no man is above the law, not even the President of the United States. And I don't think the president should have blanket immunity. I don't think that that's the way the court's going to rule. But, it's certainly an important issue for us to continue to pay attention to.
Do you want Donald Trump to face a trial? Should there be a verdict before the election? Should the American people go into November knowing the outcome of these charges?
I would prefer that. Sometimes the justice system moves pretty slowly, and so I'm not sure if that's going to happen. But I think we need to get to the facts. I know that there are a lot of people that are distrusting all of our institutions, and there are Republicans that say it's weaponization of the Justice Department. But there's serious issues and problems and things that we have to get to the bottom of, and it'd be better to get them resolved and have those court cases decided. I mean, I have confidence in our justice system, and I think we've got to get them. It's going to create more havoc if it happens after the election rather than before.
The Supreme Court decided unanimously that Donald Trump should be allowed to be on the ballot in all 50 states. Do you agree with that?
I do agree with it, and I'm glad it was unanimous because I think the voters are the ones that ought to have that determination in November, whether they want Donald Trump to be president or not, and not have a state just not allow him to compete. It's just not the way our system works. In spite of, all of the concerns and questions about Donald Trump, he hasn't been proven guilty in a court of law, and you can't just kick somebody off the ballot. The voters have a right to decide.
You have said before, when it comes to abortion, especially in your state, it is protected. Democrats are making too big of a deal of it. In fact, that it's under threat or under attack, but it is going to now be on the ballot in Maryland in November. Has your view changed at all, especially now that we're looking at other states where now IVF is in question and there are states that are no longer protecting women's rights?
Sure. Well, my record has always been very clear. I promised to protect women's rights. I did that for 8 years as governor. Maryland law is one of the strongest in the country. And
then why is it back on the ballot?
There really isn't. So the law, the thing on the ballot just codifies the existing law. So it's not really, we've got to be honest with Maryland voters, it's not really going to change anything.
But it protects it.
No, it's already protected, and it's not going to change anything at the federal level, where I said I would vote against the ban. But yeah, IVF, I was the first person in the country to speak out against that ruling. I thought it was absurd and ridiculous, and it's such a wonderful opportunity for families who want to have children that aren't able to. IVF is great, and I spoke out long before anyone else in the party did.
I do want to ask, you were one of the, maybe not the first Republicans, but you spoke out against Donald Trump pretty early on, which is a difficult thing to do. What has that been like for you as a Republican? Because right now we look at Republicans that are currently in office, and we're wondering, why don't they say anything? And we might not appreciate what that's like. What was it like for you?
Well, it's certainly tough to stand up anytime when you're among friends or a member of the group, and you say, I disagree with all of you, and you come out and you have the courage to stand up. But I think a lot of Republicans actually agreed with the things I was saying. They were just afraid to come out and say them. But I was rewarded by the voters of my state, Republicans and Democrats, who appreciated the fact that I told it like it was. And sure, you catch some flack and you get called names, but I think we need more leaders that have the courage to stand up. I'll stand up to the current president, the former president, to the Republican Party or the Democratic Party, and I'm going to tell people exactly what I think. And I'm not as concerned. Most people are too concerned about their next reelection and making everybody happy, whereas I just try to give people exactly what I think the right answer is.
Was the blowback tougher than you thought? Why don't other people do the same?
I'm in a little easier position because there's only about 20% of the people in my state are Republicans. So in the other places, they were challenged by primaries in a very red state. It's tougher, I think, to speak out without more blowback. But yeah, I think we need more profiles and courage. And I think it's one thing if somebody really strongly supports everything the president says and does, and they really believe it. It's different when people know that there's something wrong and they won't go out and say it.